All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the ISO. So what the ISO is this has to do with the sensitivity of the sensor. The more sensitive the sensor, think about that as the brightness, right? As sensitivity increases, the brightness increases. So the way that the ISO works is that the lower the ISO number, the less sensitive the sensor, which means the darker the image. The higher the number, the more sensitive the sensor and the brighter the image. So let's say, for example, I have an ISO of 100, right? That's going to be considered low. On a scale of 100 to 6400, let's just use that scale for right now. 100 would be considered low, which would be a darker image. If I have that exact same image with the exact same settings and go from 100 to 3200 or 6400, you'll see that the image gets brighter. Now, what's the trade-off with this? As you increase the ISO and the sensor becomes more sensitive, it picks up additional things, additional artifacts. So what you'll notice is sometimes you'll notice something called noise in your image, right? Now what this noise is this is a cause because the sensor is picking up additional artifacts in the on the sensor because it's more sensitive. So as you increase your sensitivity, as you increase the ISO, be prepared to see additional noise. This is why it's extremely important to keep the ISO down as low as possible, because by keeping it down as low as possible, you'll have the crisper image, you'll have the nicer image, you'll have the cleaner image. So just keep that in mind. Now with video, it's important to understand that some cameras have a base ISO. Now what's a base ISO mean? Well, a base ISO pretty much means that it's the stock kind of sensor, the stock area where you want the ISO to get the maximum amount of dynamic range. And what the dynamic range is think about that as the range in which you can move your image from up to down to from brighter to darker without losing too much information. Now this is going to be something that we're going to go into later as far as dynamic range is concerned, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but what I want you guys to understand is that the camera that you're going to be using may have a base ISO. Now with still cameras, typically the base ISO is just the lowest on the camera. So if you're using, like, let's say for example, the 7D that I have or the 5D Mark III, which I have, I would probably use the base ISO of 100 because that's the lowest and it's going to be the cleanest image. Now, if you're using a cinema camera, which is a professional grade camera, what I would do is I would look up the information and see what the base ISO is. So for example, on the C300 Mark II, the base ISO is about 800 or 850. So that's where I try to keep it as best I can in order to have the maximum dynamic range and the cleanest image. So that being said, what we're going to do is move to the third part, which is the shutter speed.